Hey guys, this is Mrs. Spouse. If you want to view Mr. Spouse's instructional video, you can. I'm just doing my version of it because, even though you may read the same book as your husband or boyfriend, girls tend to think differently than men do, the whole left brain, right brain kind of deal. So maybe you'll find some useful information in this video that maybe Mr. Spouse didn't touch upon or didn't think was necessary. So this is just my take on it. Basically, this is the terrarium that we got. There's two hideaways. One on the hot side, which is where we have the thermometer gauge on the back. And one that's on the cold side, which is where the hydrometer is on the back, which is for the humidity. You want to make sure that the one that's on the cool side is kept with plenty of moisture, which is, they also call it a humid hide, which you can also look that up if you want to get more information on how to create it. But basically the way we did it was just getting a Tupperware, and I cut a hole into it. The hole should be big enough and wide enough that the gecko can go through it, but not too wide, because the whole point of the humid hide is to keep the moisture locked in as much as possible. So that is just big enough for them to get in and out of comfortably. You also want to make sure carefully, using a lighter, that you burn the area that you cut, because obviously their skin is very sensitive, and you want to make sure that while they're getting in and out, they're not cutting themselves. So by burning the edges, it'll melt the plastic just enough that it'll smooth it out. We also have the calcium. A lot of videos online and a lot of resources online will tell you that the calcium, you don't need it with vitamin D3, and some will tell you that you do need it with vitamin D3. Regardless of which one you buy, the best thing is that you continuously keep the calcium. So I don't see that the vitamin would hurt them. So even if it is wrong, I mean, a little bit more vitamin isn't going to do anything to them. But then if you buy the one without any vitamin in it, it could be that they're also missing the vitamin nutrients. So then they could have a deficiency. So it's better to just, I would suggest getting the calcium with the vitamin D3 in it, which I believe Mr. Spouse showed you in the other video. That's the one we purchased. Of course, there's other brands, like Fluker's has a brand also with vitamin D3. And you'll notice when you go to purchase it that the one without D3 will say on the label without D3. I personally think that the vitamin D3, and what I understand is that the vitamin D3 is good for them. The other thing that we have in the tank is obviously their water bowl, which is also like a soaking bowl. And from what we understand, about once a week you should literally get your gecko and put it into the water for at least a couple of minutes. It'll help with the shedding process, which is also part of the reason why you want a humid hide in there, because the humidity is what allows them to shed. We also have a mealworm dish, which we just purchased today. And the mealworms can be in there all the time. Nothing's going to happen to them. And the way that you can store your mealworms when you purchase them at the store, they sell them at about $2 or $3 for like 150 mealworms that come inside the little plastic. And we have the actual mealworm covered. All you want to do is have like a little opening. You can store it in your refrigerator, not the freezer, in your refrigerator. And you want to make sure that when you're going to change out the worms from the dish, when you put in new worms, let them defrost a little bit, because they're going to be cold straight out of the fridge, which is hard for them to digest. So you want to make sure that the worms have some time on the counter, inside of the dish if you want. And then the other ones, you can just keep them stored in the refrigerator, and they can last for about a couple of weeks in there, from what I understand. This is the first time we get them. So we'll see. Right now they're active and they're moving around because they are defrosted. But when you keep them in your fridge, don't think that they're dead when you pull them out. They're not. It's just that they're cold. So when they're cold, when their system is cool, obviously they're not going to be moving around. Let's see, what else do we have? We just purchased a succulent also, which I'm sure Mr. Spouse talked about in the other video. There's a lot of different types of plants that you can buy for your terrarium. We just chose this one just because we went like with the desert look. So that's why it's a succulent. But there's orchids, there's all kinds of stuff like that. You can add more color to your video. Also, there's the bedding, that the substrate that we picked right now at this time, because it's a baby, the substrate that we have on there is like the mat. It's not grass or anything, but it's a special type of mat that's made for them, and that comes in the tan desert color, which is to look like sand, and it also comes in green. This type of mat is perfect for them when they're babies, for the simple fact that the calci sand, which is the calcium sand, because they don't know how to eat correctly yet, while they're eating, they'll take in, with the crickets, they'll take in some of that calcium sand, which will impact their stomach. So you want to make sure at the beginning, at least until they're 8 months old and you can determine sex and all that stuff and they're bigger, that you continuously keep putting this type of substrate. Now this substrate, you need to keep track of it, because the problem is, although it says on the cover that it's absorbent and all that stuff, it can get mold and fungus and all that stuff if there's a lot of urine and a lot of water and waste on it, which regardless, you should be cleaning this out, you know, whenever you see waste. And then a complete clean out of the entire tank, like replacing the substrate and everything, should be done at least once a month, once, or you know, every 1 or 2 months. 2 months would be like pushing it, but at least once a month you should be changing that out. And then of course, when they get bigger, you can go ahead and switch to the calci sand. And what we're planning on doing is leaving a mat like this, the substrate, and then putting the calci sand over it. That way it makes it easier to clean and the sand doesn't get into the bottom, and also it won't heat up as much, in case which we can't show you now, but there's a heating pad on this portion of the tank, which is the hot side, and then on this side there's no mat. So you also want to make sure that you don't get a very big mat. Get the one that's relative to the size of the gallons of the tank that you have, because although they need the hot side, you want to make sure that they have more of the cool than of the hot. There should only be a certain area. It shouldn't be half and half, because then what happens is the area, even though that it's cool, let's say about here, it'll still receive some of the heat from the mat on the cool side. So that will limit even more the cool side of your tank. So you want to make sure it's a little bit less than half the area where you have your heat mat. So I think that's pretty much it. And the temperature should stay between 75 and 83, 84. I wouldn't go any higher than that, and I wouldn't go any lower than that. That's like the minimum and the maximum. And the humidity in the tank, we have it right now, it's at a steady 50. It hasn't really moved from there. But that's pretty much it. I'm going to introduce you now to the gecko that we picked up today. She is a Super Hypo Tangerine, and I named her ELOISE, as you can see from the sticker. I don't know how well you'll be able to see the colors on the camera, but she is absolutely beautiful. And she's a quick one. I tried taking her out in the car, and she was moving around quite a bit. So this is ELOISE. I don't know if you can see the bright yellowy orange color. And she has a little bit of orange on the tail. I'm not sure if it's going to stay like that. But she's a little bit bigger than the one that we already have, that Mr. Spouse featured on his video. And we already know, obviously, that she's a female. So regardless of what sex the other one is, it should be fine in the tank. So I'm going to go ahead and add her in. And we're probably going to do another video coming up soon with the stand that Mr. Spouse is going to build for the terrarium. And most probably I'm looking at the tank with all of these dishes, all of these food bowls and dishes going on, and it's looking kind of small. So we might go ahead and switch to a 20-gallon and then just keep this in case we get an extra male or something like that that can't be kept, because you can only have obviously one I'm sorry, one male to every like 2 or 3 females. So when we get another male, he won't be able to be in the tank, so he'll have to be by himself in another tank. So for now, that's it. If you want to leave any comments or any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Please be sure and check out Mr. Spouse's instructional video. I know he talks about the crickets and the mealworms in his video. So hopefully you find this video informative, and we'll keep you guys updated on what's going on.